It's Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. It's Boogie Person, not Boogie Man. The warmth of collectivism has revealed feces in New York City, and RFK Jr. on what ails ya, next on the AM Update. To remind you one more time, some housekeeping. This is the last episode of the AM Update until, I believe, March 4th. Maybe March 3rd. We'll see how jet lagged I am when I get back from my overseas trip. Gonna have a couple more days here stateside with the family, spending extra time that I'd usually spend on the AM Update on the family. So just want to let you know, no AM Update from henceforth until March 4th. The crazed tranny dad, the tranny terrorist who shot up a high school hockey game in Rhode Island, threatened to go, quote-unquote, berserk in a so-called trans rights rant just a day before he massacred 2 family members and injured 3 others. Robert Dorgan, who also says he was a woman and identified as Roberta, killed himself after opening fire at the Pawtucket ice rink where his son was playing Monday afternoon. Less than a week after another tranny terrorist shot up a school in one of Canada's deadliest mass shootings in history. The night before the bloodshed, the 56-year-old Dorgan, who underwent meatball surgery in the name of gender back in 2020, made an ominous post on X in anger at someone calling Democratic Representative Tim McBride, who goes by the name of Sarah and is also someone who believes himself to be a woman. Well, this Dorgan guy who shot up that hockey game went off, quote, "Keep bashing us, but do not wonder why we go berserk." Police believe Dorgan, too, was targeting his own family when he wreaked havoc at the ice rink following years of heated court disputes over his so-called identity. When you're messing with the fundamental building blocks of how God created you, how he knit you together in your mother's womb, the very concept of sex, you are messing with forces that no one can possibly understand, not this side of heaven. And this is just the latest and tragic and deadly example of that. The person that Robert Dorgan was mad about so-called misgendering or mistreatment of, Tim McBride, we'll hear from him a little later on. But first, we go to this. Who could have seen this coming? When you elect a socialist, they raid the treasury and hike the taxes.
What we would rather do is ensure that they remain as they are so that the city can be on firm financial footing. However, in order to get to this point of closing the gap on both this fiscal year and the next fiscal year, we are forced to raid the rainy day fund, the retiree health benefits trust reserve, and to increase property taxes across these other years.
New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani also threatening Governor Kathy Hochul.
For those who have watched budget after budget, it is tempting to assume that we are engaging in the same dance as our predecessors. Let me assure you, nothing about this is typical. That's why our solutions won't be either. There are 2 paths to bridge this gap. The first is the most sustainable and the fairest path. This is the path of ending the drain on our city and raising taxes on the richest New Yorkers and the most profitable corporations.
Turns out the warmth of collectivism is revealing feces. No, I mean that literally. People are taking videos all over New York City. As the snow melts, it's revealing fecal matter all over the sidewalks. But I'm sure there's a metaphor in there somewhere as well. Vice President J.D. Vance went on Fox News to discuss the Trump administration's push to build more houses.
To make housing more affordable is to actually lower interest rates. Right now, because of the Federal Reserve, we have interest rates that are still way too high, even though inflation has come down. Frankly, it's come down faster than people thought it would under the Trump administration, and yet the Federal Reserve is keeping interest rates stubbornly high. That means if you go and apply for a mortgage, you're paying much more for that mortgage than you should. So we're going to make it easier to build and create homes. We're going to make it easier for Americans rather than Wall Street to buy those homes. But we also need to get interest rates lower. That's a critical part of the president's agenda.
What do you say to people who say, well, I'm not sure I should have a 3rd or a 4th child because it's too expensive?
Well, one, I hear them, and I know a lot of young American families are actually deciding not to have kids or delaying kids. I mean, look, what I would say is it's never a good time in the sense that it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be easy. I know as the father of 3 with a 4th on the way, there are always going to be challenges. But I don't know anybody who chose to have another kid who regretted it. Even sometimes if it was financially difficult, it often is.
That's some good messaging, especially at the very end there from Vice President J.D. Vance, who's been a little bit quiet in recent days from the administration. Polymarket says the odds of the Republican Party winning the U.S. Senate back in the midterm elections dropping to a new low of 60%. Democrats are favored to take control of the House of Representatives with an 83% probability, according to Polymarket. That's near its highs. Moving on. The U.S. government has released fresh intelligence on what it claims was an illicit Chinese nuclear test conducted in 2020. On June 22nd of that year, a remote seismic station in Kazakhstan detected a tiny earthquake. The event registered at just a 2.75 magnitude, but it originated around 450 miles away at China's main nuclear test site, known as Lop Nur, according to Christopher Yu, Assistant Secretary for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation at the State Department. He said in a statement, quote, "There is very little possibility that it is anything other than an explosion, a singular explosion. It is quite consistent with what you would expect from a nuclear explosive device." Independent experts did not immediately agree with that assessment of ratios of different seismic waves as consistent with an explosion, said Ben Dando, according to NPR. The head of the seismology and verification at NORSAR, a Norwegian organization that watches for possible nuclear tests. But he added, the signal was weak and it was recorded at a single station. Based on those limitations and others, he believes it's still possible it could have been a natural event. So the Chinese, in addition to releasing, although it was probably 2019 when they released COVID on the world, they made hay while the sun shined and the world slept. They made sure to test a nuclear weapon, according to the State Department, in the middle of 2020. Now it's 2026. We're just now finding out about this. Again, as I said on Monday, great powers just doing stuff, exercising great power. Tim McBride, Delaware congressman who pretends to be a woman, spoke with Hillary Clinton at the Munich Security Conference about the concept of what benefits so-called strongmen and authoritarians. Listen to this.
In jobs when there is scarcity, and a strong man's greatest asset is scarcity. When there is scarcity in jobs, when there is scarcity of opportunity, they pick boogeymen, or in this case, boogie people.
So, what do you do with that? Tim McBride, the congressman from Delaware, claiming that the administration makes boogeymen out of gender-confused, spiritually sick people who believe they are not the sex that God created them. And he claimed this, I believe it was the day before, a spiritually sick, mentally deranged, gender-confused 56-year-old man shot his family to death, injured more, and turned the gun on himself. And Tim McBride, the Delaware congressman, said this less than a week after a much younger young man, gender-confused, spiritually sick, shot 9 people, I believe, including himself, injured 25 more in Canada. This stuff is not just delusional, it's dangerous. Not just for kids, for all ages. If you engage in the demonic deception of transgenderism, that should be illegal. That should be illegal. No, I don't believe in absolute free speech, freedom of expression. No, I'm drawing the line at doctrines of demons. Thank you very much. I'm going to take that to the bank. When we come back, RFK Jr. on what ails ya. 5 months and 5 years apart. What am I talking about? I'll tell you about that and more next. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., HHS Secretary, had a nice sit-down interview with CBS News' 60 Minutes, and he really distilled in, I think, about 2 minutes what he's truly trying to accomplish in his position in the federal government.
70% of Americans are either obese or overweight, and it's not because they got indolent or because we became lazy or because we suddenly developed giant appetites. It's because we're being given food that is low in nutrition and high in calories, and it's destroying our health. I see it when I go across the country.
We met with Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. last month after he issued new dietary guidelines that for the first time advise against highly processed foods. You have said that these ultra-processed foods are poisoning us. I think many Americans would be surprised to hear that.
And we're seeing in our population people who are obscenely obese and at the same time malnourished. Who wants to start?
Kennedy says that's largely because we don't know the health consequences of what we're eating, thanks to the grass exemption enacted by Congress in 1958 that allows food companies to independently verify the safety of their ingredients with no government oversight if they are generally recognized by experts as safe. Pending White House approval, he intends to close that back door.
That loophole was hijacked by the industry, and it was used to add thousands upon thousands of new ingredients into our food supply. In Europe, there's only 400 legal ingredients. This agency does not know how many ingredients there are in American food.
We do not know.
They do not know. The estimates are between 4,000 and 10,000. We have no idea what they are.
How do we know what is safe to eat?
There is no way for any American to know if a product is safe if it is ultra-processed.
RFK Jr. on CBS 60 Minutes. And I think in 2 minutes there, he really sums up the dichotomy, before we even get to Big Pharma, of why Big Pharma makes a lot of money in the first place. And I think there's two things here, and you heard them back to back. In the first part, we have full bellies and layers of fat and are extremely malnourished. That seems counterintuitive, but it's very much true. We have a lot of calories, we have a lot of full stomachs, but we don't have the things that we actually need. Vitamins, minerals, protein, at least more protein than what the typical American diet promotes. So there's that. From an external standpoint, layers upon layers, too many layers of fat. Full stomachs, but malnourished. And in the second part, companies that basically have carte blanche control, power over what they can and cannot tell you. They can claim things that aren't really true, or with a wink and a nod are true. They don't really have to tell you the process. Yes, an ingredients list looks nice, but they don't really have to tell you the process, even if you can understand what emulsified fill in the blank really means. Which, by the way, if anything is emulsified, it's probably bad. Those two things, I think, are just the 1-2 punch of why we are where we are with American health and why Big Pharma makes a lot of money fixing those two issues. Malnourishment and a food industrial complex that just feeds into that. No pun intended. And finally, let's go to this. I saw this posted from Charlie Kirk, executive producer Andrew Colvett. I didn't know this. I didn't listen to Rush Limbaugh much in his closing years. But Andrew Colvett pointed out it's been 5 years since Rush Limbaugh passed away. It's been 5 months since Charlie Kirk was murdered. I didn't know this, but Rush Limbaugh talked about it quite frequently, how much admiration he had for the great Charlie Kirk.
There was a conference, what was it, Turning Point USA. How many kids were there? And there 3,000 student activists here it was actually over in West Palm Beach. And this is a group that has been put together and operates under the auspices of Charlie Kirk, right? Who is you're going to be hearing that name if you haven't. Charlie Kirk. Let me just tell you. I don't want to jinx him, but I'm just going to tell you. They brought Charlie Kirk to the golf course to meet me about a month ago. he was in town to set up this Turning Point thing. And they brought him to the golf course to meet me. It was we were getting ready for a 8:45 a.m. start. And they brought him out while I was getting ready to go to the range to loosen up. And I spoke with him for about a half hour. And he told me how he grew up in a home where my program was on all the time. He was just effusively complimentary to me, which I, of course, understood and told him he's very wise. His family's very wise. He chuckled. He laughed. This is the kind of guy that you can see really becoming big in politics as he gets older. He just has the carriage, the personality, the charisma. You may think this sounds weird, but I remember when Bill Clinton became president, there were all of these stories about Bill Clinton at Oxford and Bill Clinton at Yale and Bill Clinton here and all these people who went to school with him. There were story after story after story where people were saying that they just knew Bill Clinton was going to be president someday. In college, he just had that kind of ambition, and he impressed people in a way that he could. I'm telling you that people are saying the same things about Charlie Kirk.
5 years ago, we lost Rush Limbaugh. 5 months ago, Charlie Kirk was taken from us. And Andrew Colvett, executive producer of The Charlie Kirk Show, posting that clip from Rush Limbaugh, waxing poetic with effusive praise of one Charlie Kirk. Colvett also reminded us that Kirk, after Rush's passing, revealed with Catherine Limbaugh's blessing that Rush had actually become a large donor in secret to TPUSA. Two giants. Don't want to end this on a dour note, but more of a celebratory note. Just what they meant to so many people. And again, 5 years this week since Rush Limbaugh passed away. 5 months since Charlie Kirk. That is going to do it for a Wednesday. And that's going to do it for me for a little while. It's actually going to be about 2 weeks till I'm back here again. I wish I could have a fill-in. I'm big enough to where I feel like I need one, but small enough where I can't really pay anybody to fill in for me. That's going to do it. And again, I hope you have a wonderful next couple of weeks. Please don't forget about me. I'm going to be over in Israel. Looking forward to that. Going to be shooting some content unlike anything I've ever done before in my career. I hope it turns out well. I appreciate the prayers. We'll see you when we see you.